You are going to die. Not today. Not this year, hopefully. But someday your cells will stop dividing, your body will slow, and the light behind your eyes will quietly go out. You have always accepted this as the price of being alive. But what if it isn't? What if aging is not a law written into the universe, but a quirk of your particular biology? What if, in the ocean beneath you right now, there are living things for which death by old age simply does not happen? They are not imaginary. They are not myths. Scientists have found them, studied them, dated them, and watched them slip past the one boundary you were told nothing could cross. Let's start with the strangest one. Somewhere in warm coastal water drifts a jellyfish smaller than your fingernail. It is almost invisible. It has no brain, no heart, no bones. And yet biologists gave it a nickname that sounds impossible. The immortal jellyfish. Its scientific name is Turritopsis dohrnii. Most jellyfish live fast and die young. They grow, they drift, they reproduce, and then they wither and dissolve back into the sea. That is the normal arc of a life, the same arc you are on. But this tiny creature does something no textbook of biology once thought possible. When it is injured, starving, or simply old, it does not die. It reverses. Picture a butterfly that, sensing the end approaching, dissolves itself and crawls back into the cocoon as a caterpillar. That is roughly what this animal does. Its adult body melts down and reorganizes into an earlier stage of its own life, a small blob anchored to the seafloor called a polyp. From there, it grows up all over again. Then, if threatened, it can do it once more. And again. Scientists call this trick transdifferentiation, which is a long word for a simple, astonishing idea. It means one type of fully formed cell can transform directly into a completely different type of cell. Your own body almost never does this. A skin cell stays a skin cell. But this jellyfish rewrites its own cells at will, turning old ones young. One researcher has spent much of his career quietly obsessed with this animal. His name is Shin Kubota, a marine biologist at Kyoto University in Japan. For years, he kept these jellyfish alive in his lab, feeding them by hand, watching individuals loop backward through their own life cycle over and over. He even wrote songs about them. To him, this fragile speck of jelly holds a clue to something enormous. If a living creature can reset its own age, then aging is not a one-way door. At least, not for everyone. So why does it not work for you? Hold that question, because the answer is stranger than the jellyfish itself, and we will come back to it. First, you need to meet the others. Because the immortal jellyfish is not alone. In freshwater ponds and streams, there lives a tiny tube-shaped animal called a Hydra. It is a relative of the jellyfish, just a few millimeters long, with a ring of thin tentacles at one end. For most of history, no one paid it much attention. It seemed like nothing special. It was only when researchers watched it closely for years that they noticed something was very wrong with the way it aged. It didn't. A biologist named Daniel Martinez, working at Pomona College in the United States, ran an experiment that most scientists assumed would be boring. He kept Hydra alive under careful protected conditions and simply recorded how many died over time. In almost any animal, the older it gets, the more likely it is to die. That rising risk of death with age has a name. Scientists call it senescence. It is the slow biological decline you can feel in your own joints, your own memory, your own skin. It is aging itself. But the Hydra showed almost none of it. Old Hydra were dying at roughly the same low rate as young ones. Year after year, they refused to decline. Martinez estimated that under ideal conditions, some of these animals might, in principle, live for centuries without ever growing frail. The secret seems to lie in their bodies being made largely of stem cells that divide endlessly. A Hydra is constantly rebuilding itself from scratch. It never lets its parts grow old because it keeps replacing them. There is a term for creatures like this. Biologists call it negligible senescence, meaning aging so slow it can barely be measured. The phrase was popularized by an American scientist named Caleb Finch, who spent his life studying why some organisms decline and others seem to escape it entirely. Now you might be thinking, these are all tiny, simple animals, blobs, specks, creatures without a face. Surely nothing large and complex, nothing more like you, could pull off the same trick. That is exactly what scientists used to believe. And it is where this gets personal. Because the strangest part of this story is still ahead, and it changes how you should see your own body entirely. Deep in the icy black water of the North Atlantic and the Arctic swims a shark. It is slow, blind in one sense, and utterly unhurried. This is the Greenland shark, and it may be the longest-lived animal with a backbone on the entire planet. For a long time, no one could tell how old these sharks were. There was no obvious way to date them. Then, a team of researchers led by a marine biologist named Julius Nielsen, working through the University of Copenhagen, found a clever solution. The lens at the center of a Greenland shark's eye forms before birth and never gets replaced. It is a sealed time capsule of chemistry. By measuring traces of radioactive carbon locked inside that lens, the team could estimate the animal's age. The numbers they found were almost impossible to believe. The oldest sharks in their study appeared to be several centuries old. Some estimates stretched toward 400 years. Sit with that for a moment. A Greenland shark alive today may have been swimming these same cold waters before your country existed, before the telescope, before the light bulb, before nearly every name in your history books. It was already old when your great-great-grandparents were born. It has outlived empires, and it may still have decades left. Now let's visualize exactly what that means. Imagine a single animal drifting in the dark, growing perhaps a centimeter a year. It does not rush. It does not panic. In 400 years, it will barely change. Its heart beats slowly. Its cold, deep world keeps everything patient. And time, which grinds you down day by day, seems to have almost no grip on it at all. The Greenland shark is not truly immortal. It can still die. But it shows that even a large, complex animal, an animal with a spine and a brain and a heart, much like yours, can shrug off aging for centuries. And it is not even the record holder. That title may belong to something you would step over without a second glance. A clam. On the seafloor near Iceland, researchers pulled up an ocean quahog, a type of hard-shelled clam. When they counted the growth rings layered into its shell, the way you count rings in a tree trunk, the number stopped them cold. This single clam had been alive for more than 500 years. Scientists nicknamed it Ming, because it had been born around the time of a Chinese dynasty by that name. It had been sitting quietly on the bottom of the ocean, filtering water, since long before the world had heard of most of what you take for granted. Now a warning. Not every animal you may have heard called immortal actually is. You have probably seen it claim that lobsters never age, that they simply grow larger forever and never die of old age. It is a wonderful story. It is also mostly wrong. Lobsters do produce high levels of an enzyme called telomerase, which helps repair the protective caps on their chromosomes that normally fray as an animal ages. That does slow their decline in a real and measurable way, but it does not make them immortal. Lobsters must shed their hard shells to keep growing, and that molting process becomes more exhausting and dangerous the larger they get. Eventually, many simply run out of the energy to do it, and they die. So the lobster is not a creature that escaped death. It is a reminder to be careful and to check the claim before you believe it. That caution matters here, because the real cases are astonishing enough without exaggeration. So here is where the question sharpens. If a jellyfish can rewind itself, If a Hydra refuses to decline, if a shark can last 4 centuries and a clam 5, then why not you? Why does your body break down at all? The answer sits inside almost every cell you have, and it involves a creature that lives right under your feet. Consider the naked mole rat. It is not going to win any beauty contests. It is a small, wrinkled, nearly hairless rodent that spends its life in dark tunnels beneath the soil of East Africa. By the ordinary rules of biology, an animal this size should live only a few years, the way a mouse does. Instead, naked mole rats can live for decades, and a researcher named Rochelle Buffenstein, who has studied them for much of her career, documented something even stranger about how they age. They barely seem to. For most of their long lives, naked mole rats do not show the rising risk of death that defines aging in nearly every other mammal. Their bodies resist the slow decline. They rarely develop the cancers that kill so many other animals. Their cells appear to have unusual defenses, extra layers of protection that keep their tissues functioning long past the point where a similar-sized creature would have worn out. And this is a mammal, a warm-blooded animal with a heart and lungs and a spine, not so far from you on the tree of life, which means the barrier between you and these creatures is not some vast, unbridgeable gulf. It is biology. And biology can, in principle, be understood. So why do you age? The honest answer is that scientists are still assembling it, but the shape of it is becoming clear. Aging is not one single failure. It is many small ones adding up. Your cells copy themselves over and over, and each copy carries tiny errors. The protective caps on the ends of your chromosomes wear down with each division. Damage accumulates faster than your body repairs it. Slowly, the balance tips. The animals that escape aging are, in different ways, all doing the same thing. They are keeping that balance. The Hydra replaces its cells before they can grow old. The jellyfish resets its cells entirely. The naked mole rat repairs damage that would destroy other animals. They have each found a different door out of the room you are trapped in. And here is the twist, the part that should genuinely change how you think about your own life. For most of scientific history, aging was treated as inevitable, like gravity, something to accept, matter, never to question. But these animals are living proof that it is not a fixed rule of the universe. It is a setting, a dial. In some creatures, that dial is turned almost all the way down, which raises a possibility that would have sounded like fantasy a century ago, and that serious researchers now discuss openly. If aging is a biological process, then it is, at least in theory, a process that might one day be slowed, paused, or even partly reversed. Not tomorrow, perhaps not in your lifetime, but no longer impossible. So think about what you did today. You looked in the mirror and maybe noticed a new line on your face. You felt a little more tired than you used to. You quietly measured yourself against time, the way you always have, assuming the outcome was fixed. The immortal jellyfish drifting in the sea does not carry that assumption. Neither does the shark in the cold Arctic dark, or the clam that watched 500 years pass from the seafloor. To them, the slow winding down you feel as your inevitable fate is simply an option their biology declined. You are going to die, but you now know something your ancestors never could. That sentence, which felt as certain as sunrise, is not a law of nature at all. It is a feature of one kind of animal on one branch of life, on one small planet. And somewhere out there in the water, quietly, patiently, are the ones who prove it does not have to be true.